All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, and I am joined by a special guest today. We've got USC Nico from Twitter, I guess, right?
Yeah, most
So special guest to preview the USC matchup between Michigan and USC this weekend. Wanted to bring on a Trojan and talk some shit, So Nico, appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. A big week ahead.
For sure, for sure. So before we get started, I've got two cans here. I've got our Hail IPA, and then I've got where am I? And then I've got Sun Cruiser, iced tea vodka. So I might crack a couple here while we're doing the show here. But shout out to Sun Cruiser, shout out to Hail IPA. You can get a Hail IPA in the stadium this weekend at Michigan Stadium. So pretty pumped about that. And then check out Sun Cruiser. There are no bubbles in it. It's a great new version of Twisted Tea. So I don't know if you've had it. I don't know if it's made it to LA yet, Nico, but you might have
Definitely
to try.
hasn't. No, we have those seltzers and stuff, but mainly it's just beer and hard alcohol out here.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, first of all, welcome to the Big Ten.
Thank you. I can tell you, Trojan Nation, Trojan family is happy to be in the Big Ten. Finally, we were chatting about it before we started recording.
Yeah. So okay. So you're transitioning. What was the end of Pac-12? Like that does have to be kind of sad, though, right? Like just all of a sudden, it felt like overnight the conference dissipated, and it was like, holy shit! Like, what are we gonna do?
Yes and no. I mean, the Pac-12 for USC, and I mean, maybe this is just a little bit of arrogance from the Trojan fan base, but it was pretty much USC up until Oregon started coming up.
Are you guys? Wait, I have to stop you right there because are you guys the Michigan of the Pac-12? Because we definitely are the arrogant guy. Like we're yeah, we run this shit. Like that's us.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but then Oregon's been popping off a little bit, especially with their recruiting and whatnot. They have this new coach, so they've been starting to talk. But USC, we felt like we haven't felt like it. The stats show it. I mean, we ran the conference until obviously the sanctions hit, and then everything kind of hit the fan there, and then we're finally rebuilding now. So, I mean, all in all, I can tell you, at least the Trojan fan base, we're happy to be in Big Ten. I mean, we're selling out again. Like we're going to sell out the Penn State game. We sold out Wisconsin. We sold out Nebraska. The Coliseum was packed when we played Nevada 2 weeks ago. So fan base is excited for it, definitely.
I mean, that's pretty cool. It's got to just be cool. Like, I know it's fun for us to have USC come to Ann Arbor and, we go out to Washington. That's a rematch of the national title game. Oregon's coming to town. So we have new, obviously it's just some new blood to add to the schedule. But for you guys, like, every game is a new team essentially that you haven't played before outside of, the few that were in the Pac-12. So that's got to be fun. Just like thinking about Penn State has probably, have they ever been to the Coliseum?
Penn State, I don't think they have. We've been to Michigan once in our entire history. Like we're talking about now basically Rose Bowl games every other weekend. Like at USC and Michigan, I think we played 8 Rose Bowls together, or maybe even more. But it's like a Rose Bowl game every single weekend. So it's new blood. I can tell you when it's week 8 and USC is playing a Stanford team that's won 2 games a season and the kickoff is at 7 p.m. No one's excited for that. Nobody in Michigan is watching USC play Stanford. That it kind of just died. It dissipated. The excitement wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. No, I feel that for sure. But I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like Wisconsin comes to town. I know Wisconsin is not, as good as they have been in past years, but you travel to Minnesota, Penn State's coming to town, Rutgers coming to town. I mean, that is kind of crazy. You have like every East Coast team, Maryland, like you guys are going back and forth. It feels like from West Coast to East Coast all year long.
It is. I think this is one of the first years in a long time where we're going, it's home away the entire season. Like typically we'd have, a couple of years ago, we had 3 home games in a row, and then we had 3 away and a bye, and we literally weren't in the Coliseum for like a month and a half, and then we came back. So it's a lot of flying back and forth. But I mean, that was a big topic when we joined the Big Ten. It was like the fan base was like, "Oh, can we handle this?" And I mean, I don't personally think it's a big issue, but
especially not in football. I feel like in football it's going to be fine, I'm sure. it'll be very interesting once you get into some of these other sports, like even men's and women's basketball. We're used to what Tuesday night games at 8 or 9 o'clock. Now, like, do you play that at 11 p.m. Eastern time? Because it's going to be really interesting for a lot of these other sports for sure too.
Yeah, it will be. And I think what USC fans will notice too with basketball, baseball, like all the non-conference games that they have, they're probably going to be a little bit easier now. The opponents aren't going to be as difficult because when you do travel and you are facing competition in the Big Ten, obviously it's more travel time. You have more games, all that. So I think the out-of-conference schedules is probably going to be starting to get a little bit easier than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now, like, obviously Michigan just played Texas, who looked in that game like they were the best team in the country, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many of those you'll see in the future, because these conference schedules are so hard now for, whether it's the Big Ten or the SEC or even the ACC. It's like, obviously you're just dwindling down from 5 conferences to 4. And, it looks like even, maybe the ACC dissipates too. And then you're down to 3. Like, who knows what the Big 12 will look like. And so, especially if you're in the Big 10 and the SEC, it has become like every game, like you said, it's like a Rose Bowl match. It's like a huge matchup every week. I mean, for us, you go Texas week 2, USC week 4. We've got Michigan State coming at the end of October, at Washington, then Oregon. Like, it's like you don't get a week off. Like last year's schedule. I mean, last year's schedule for Michigan, I'll be honest, was like cupcake up until like week 10, right? Yeah. And we took advantage of that. Actually, it worked in our favor for sure. But yeah. So I mean, it is like it's just different. College football is different.
No
so
doubt.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I mean, even like Rutgers, we play Rutgers in late October. I don't think traditionally Rutgers is not a great team, right? But this year they put together a pretty good roster. They got a good staff now. Like, they could be ranked by the time Rutgers comes into town. So I mean, yeah, you're talking about, we have Penn State, Maryland's not looking too shabby. Nebraska, Notre Dame.
Nebraska's looking really good with Raiola. I mean, all of a sudden you look at your schedule and you're like, there's no like Oregon State on this schedule anymore, right?
No. And if we looked at a month ago, if you looked at that USC games, or USC fans were eyeing that USC Michigan game, and it looked like, and not that it's not a tall task. Obviously, Michigan's still a great football team, but that almost, like, we took a step back at that, saying, oh my God, we got to go to the freaking Ann Arbor and 100,000 people. They're going to be screaming at us the whole time. And they just won the national championship, and we're bringing an entirely new defensive staff. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen. And now all of a sudden it's starting to look a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. Obviously, like, Michigan does not look anything like they did last season. You lose JJ, you lose Blake Corum, obviously Harbaugh, and 13 other guys that went to the NFL, right? You lose a ton. But I want to ask you this question. So you're coming to the Big Ten. So I think this is what a lot of Big Ten fans want to know, though. A lot of Michigan fans, like, this is definitely the stigma, is like, can these former Pac-12 teams, can USC play Big Ten, what we would call bully ball? Can you defend the run? Can you stack the box? All that stuff. So I'll leave that question open to you.
I'm blatantly say yes to USC's degree. Absolutely. USC. I mean, we have a statue in front of our Heritage Hall that is linemen. USC. I mean, we used to play hard-nosed football, and we're getting back to that. We were the wild bunch, especially we had Clay Matthews. We had all these guys in the early 2000s. We played smash mouth football. We would go to Auburn. We beat the crap out of Auburn. We'd go anywhere. We beat anybody. So USC is trying to get back to that. I think with this new Ravens defensive scheme with D'Anton Lynn, Lincoln Riley finally realizing you can't score 60 points every game, especially if you don't have Caleb Williams running around in circles for 10 seconds to play on broken plays. So I think the physicality is coming back. As far as the UCLAs and Washington right now in a rebuild, I mean, I would be surprised if UCLA wins more than like 3 or 4 games this year.
Right.
So it'll be brutal for some teams, but I think USC, it's in our blood. Like, we want to play smash mouth football. We want to see the ball run 30 times a game. We want to see the box stacked with 4 down linemen and 2 middle linebackers and physical players.
See, I think I think again, it's tough because I don't watch like a ton of. I mean, we were always just watching Pac-12 after dark over here, right? So like whoever was playing, if I could stay up late enough after a day of tailgating and drinking and watching football and watch that 11 p.m. game and it's USC versus Oregon or whatever, like, then I would watch them. But it's always been tough, right? And I mean, last year, like even, you go to Caleb Williams and it's like, to be honest, that doesn't seem like the football you're describing right there, right? So
no,
is
last
it different? Yeah. So
last
is it very
year
different? Like your team, what you feel like you have this year, very different than what you had last year?
To a certain extent, yes. We've obviously only been through 2 weeks of football, but there's been hundreds of articles written about it. We have Coach Eric Henderson now, and he won a Super Bowl in the NFL. We have D'Anton Lynn. He played for the Ravens, coached in the NFL. Now he's defense coordinator at USC. We have Doug Belk that came over from Houston. He was in Texas. I mean, we have Matt Entz. He was in North Dakota. I mean, that was smash mouth football. It's not D1 football, but we have coaches that have an identity that like that. They want the physicality. And USC is not a brand, it's not like, it's not a UCLA where, we're going to try and play some football and, this is fun. It's Saturday. Let's have a beer. Like, USC wants to win. We want to win championships. We want to play football. We want to hit hard. So I think it will come back. May not be this year. I think we're confident, but we're certainly trending that way.
No, for sure. I mean, I watched that first game and I mean, LSU, even to be honest, hasn't looked as good as maybe we thought they were in that first game, right? So it's hard to fully tell, how good either team from that game was. But man, USC looked really, first of all, that was an awesome football game to watch.
Yeah.
Just back and forth. That was unbelievable. I can only imagine what how your fan base was feeling during
it. Was wild. Yeah, it was. I mean, you may have seen on Twitter, but I mean, it was crazy. The excitement, the adrenaline. I mean, that game, and we've been starting to see it on the recruiting trail now, too. And it's early in the season. But we're starting to get a lot more attention from those players that we kind of missed out on earlier in the cycle. But that game was absolutely crazy. And I was actually up in San Fran visiting some family. And my wife's cousin, they're all Ohio State fans. And before the game, they're like, you guys are going to get killed. It's going to be like 40 to 10, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting back on the couch drinking a beer. And at the end of the game, I was talking mad shit. I was going crazy. So
you have to, because like, to be honest, in that moment, it was like, oh shit, USC is back. Yeah. Like that was like what it felt like is, obviously, you had Caleb Williams for the last few years. You thought that like you were going to get over the hump, but just for whatever reason, that didn't work out. Right. I think, what's that?
Alex Grinch. That is like, well, it's Lincoln Riley's personal relationships trying to be buddy, but it was definitely Alex Grinch. Like that.
Yeah. Right. So, so now it feels like you have it all, that, or at least that game, it was like, okay, they've got it together. So, I mean, like, I think that you guys have had a great start. Michigan obviously has not had a great start. And so I want to talk a little bit about Michigan here for a second, where, I mean, how many teams that won the national title the year before are all of a sudden changing quarterbacks in week 4, right? Going into week 4. So obviously the offense hasn't gone well. How do you see Alex Orji coming in, Michigan's offense? It's pretty obvious that whether he can or can't throw, we don't fully know because he hasn't even thrown it. Like literally has not thrown the ball. So we're still all, even as Michigan fans, undecided if he can throw the ball or not. But how do you see Michigan's offense under Orji, like coming, going at the USC defense?
I mean, as a purist in the game, I obviously you want to see every kid ball out. Like you want them to have a great career and build a team and whatnot. But I mean, even going back to high school, it's come out. USC fans started to dig it up that he had a 52 completion percentage in high school. Now he's in college. It's his third year in college now, I believe. 7 passes. He's always been a backup. And obviously, McCarthy was at Michigan and he knew the system and he was Harbaugh's guy and all that. But you can expect to see with USC, we're going to put a lot of 3 men down, 4 men down in the box, or linemen in the box, probably 3 linebackers, honestly. I think it's just going to be a lot of containment, trying not to give Orji too much time to run or too many holes to run in. Probably a lot of 2-gap defense. I think maybe he surprises us, but we haven't seen him throw the ball accurately. So
we will both be shocked if all of a sudden he starts slinging the ball all over the field.
Yeah. And if he does that on SC, then all of a sudden the talk's what if Orji hangs 250 yards and 2 touchdowns on USC? All of a sudden the talk is going to be Michigan's back in the national title conversation. USC's defense is terrible. It's going to go back to
it's going to be exactly like USC Pac-12 team can't hang, their defense can't hang, right? Like all this stuff. Exactly. And that's 100% right. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know what the game plan is, because if we still had Davis Warren in at QB, I could tell you exactly what our game plan is. And it's exactly what happened in this, our past game, which he honestly didn't have that bad of a game. He made 3 really, honestly, one time his arm got hit. So I'm going to call out of the 3 picks, he made 2 really dumb decisions. It's funny though. He had 3 picks and was still 11 for 14. So outside of the interceptions, he didn't have an incomplete pass. So it's like he had a pretty solid game.
He did. And also the other thing, that you have to consider is that D'Anton Lynn, his defensive scheme, the 2-4-5, he's totally fine giving up those 4 or 5-yard pass plays. He's fine doing that. And that's what you guys were doing. Right. So he's fine with that. He wants to make you guys try and march down the field, and he's going to create accidents and mistakes off that. So, I mean, he completed 11 of 14, but I didn't personally watch the game. I know that you guys were up 28-10 basically at the end of the game, and then went down and scored a touchdown. I got a 2-point conversion, so it looked a lot worse than it was. But I mean, it was 28-10. That's still, obviously it's Arkansas State. You want to beat the hell out of them, but 28-10 game is not terrible.
I mean, without there was like 1 pick right before the half too, and it would have been like honestly 35-0 or 35-3. So it was a couple plays, a couple dumb decisions that made it look a lot worse than it actually was. But yeah, I mean, right now, with Orji and a quarterback, and you have Kalel Mullings at running back who ran the shit out of the ball last game. Donovan Edwards ran the shit out of the ball. We had 300 rushing yards for the first time, since last year. I believe we had, even though Michigan ran the shit out of the ball last year on the way to a national title, they still only ran for 300 yards, I believe, 1 time. So it's pretty impressive, even against Arkansas State, to run for 300 yards. So I don't know. I think if I had to guess, they're going to try and pound and see if USC's defense is up to the task. That's
I would not be surprised if you guys literally run the ball 40 times in a row.
Seriously.
Like you just run the ball up the middle, see if Mason Cobb can stop him, see if Eric Gentry, our 6'6" linebacker, he weighs 220 pounds, 225 pounds if he's soaking wet, see if he can take the hit time and time again. So that's definitely what it's going to be. And I think every now and then, obviously, you guys are trying to throw it over the top if you catch us sleeping on defense, but it's going to be a heavy run game. That's what Michigan, that will be Michigan's recipe to success.
I agree for sure. And I think that Sherrone Moore is a Harbaugh guy, right? Like he was the OC for Harbaugh, and he's an offensive lineman at heart. He wants to pound the ball. So and I don't know if you saw last year, our game against Penn State, it's pretty infamous for us, where it was Harbaugh's first game suspended. So he found out that he was going to be the head coach hours before the game or something like that. And then they went in and we couldn't figure out how to throw the ball against Penn State. They had a great defense last year, and in the second half, we literally didn't throw the ball. We ended up running the ball 32 times, I believe it was, to end the game. So, like, as crazy as it sounds for you to be like, yeah, you could run it 40 times in a row. Like,
no, I literally meant that. I meant that.
They literally will. Like, they are not afraid to do that. If it's working, they'll just keep going with it. Especially, they did that with JJ McCarthy, a top 10 NFL draft pick at quarterback. So if they're going to do that with him, they definitely will do that with Orji.
And the question with that is obviously Michigan's line is still good, but it's not last year's offensive line. The question will be, can they physically impose on USC's defensive front? And then again, like USC, we don't have right now. I mean, everybody kind of knows Bear Alexander. There's a couple names, like maybe, Mason Cobb. There's some names kind of mixed around, but this is a group effort. I mean, this team put on 1,400 pounds in the offseason. The culture has changed. That's what's brought us together. It's not those, like, we don't have a Hutchinson on the sideline that's going to make like 7 TFLs in a game. That's not going to happen. So is Michigan still good enough to impose their will on a USC team that doesn't have those name recognition players yet? And I guess we'll see. It's not that they're not good, but, are they going to be first or second round draft players on USC's front? Probably not.
Yeah, right. No, for sure. And then I believe it was, so I tweeted out like some questions for you, right? This guy, Joe, at I Knows Ball, he, to this conversation, how does Nico feel about LSU rushing for 4 yards per carry? And is he concerned about Michigan's rushing attack, especially this Orji?
Yeah. And I actually saw that.
My question more to you is the LSU side of things. Like, did you feel like LSU was imposing their will, like you were kind of mentioning just now?
It honestly, I mean, watching the game, that first drive when LSU went straight down the field and they were about to score a touchdown, but we stopped them on the fourth down. That was kind of like a waking up moment for the fan base, because as they were driving down the field, it was our first taste of the defense. Oh God, here we go again. They're going to put up 40 points. And then all of a sudden our defense got physical. Like we have Kobe Pepe was making some plays. Bear Alexander was stuff in the middle. Anthony Lucas. Like, we have a lot of guys that plug holes. They're not the penetrators. They're not throwing people like crazy, but they know their assignment. So to your question, we played physical. And if they're going to give up 4 yards a carry, but give up 20 points a game, I can almost guarantee you that Lincoln Riley is going to score more than 20 points a game, and it doesn't really matter what team we play. I mean, I don't think he's ever scored under 20 in his entire coaching career. So we're playing physical ball, and I don't think watching the game that LSU was imposing the will on SC at all.
Okay, all right, I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think that both those teams, it was just so fast paced to us that seems like it's just pass, but there were a lot of run plays.
It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. Woody Marks had a hell of a game. That transfer running back we have from Mississippi State. That guy's made himself known. I mean, that guy, he's elite, man. I'm so happy he's at USC. Miller Moss, he became a household name with that game. He made some throws that just made you question how the hell he fit it in there. Kyron Hudson had that one-handed grab over the middle. So we have playmakers, but that game was a fun game. I'm still thinking about it. That was exciting to watch.
It was. I want to talk about Miller Moss and the USC offense here in a minute, but the last question I have for you was also from Twitter, and it was from Daniel Vega. He said, does it matter at all that Sherrone Moore announced Orji early? So he announced, Sherrone came out on Monday, said Alex Orji's our quarterback. A lot of Michigan Nation was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is the one time where you have two polar opposite quarterbacks, and obviously Davis didn't play well on Saturday, but like, you could have at least let them have to prepare for both quarterbacks, and now you're saying you just have to prepare for the guy who is a very obvious runner and a not elite passer?
Yeah. I was going to turn around and ask you, do you think it was a good idea? Like, I don't think it matters who you're playing. That's just, you don't. It kind of seemed almost like a novice move to do. Like maybe he was asked by a reporter. I don't know how it came out, and he kind of Sharon just said it off the cusp. I don't know why he would say that, but it definitely matters. I mean, you're giving, in my opinion, D'Anton Lynn is a top 3, top 5 defensive coordinator. He's probably going to be a head coach in 2 years, if not next year. Hopefully he stays at USC for longer than a year stint, but you can't give someone with that knowledge of the game, I mean, to key in and to know what your game plan is essentially going to be. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because like we as Michigan fans are so used to Jim Harbaugh, who he wouldn't reveal, like we didn't know who was quarterback, even like, obviously in year 3, he did name JJ the starter like way early, but JJ had already solidified himself. Yeah, they went 12-0 in the regular season the year before. Like you're not gonna. So, but the year before that, when it was Cade versus JJ, like we didn't know until like game 3 that JJ was the starter, right? And so we're so used to Jim Harbaugh, who keeps everything so close to his chest, doesn't reveal anything, and then Sharon just comes out in the one time that it's like actually super beneficial because there's such different players and you have to run a different offense, and blurts it out, and I'm like. In my head, I'm like, go tell the team that. That's fine. Obvious. I want them to know so that they can all mentally prepare, physically prepare during the week for Orji being the starter. But like, you don't have to tell any of us that. You definitely don't have to tell USC that.
Do you? And that's another. What I found interesting is that he told the media before the team knew. That's maybe I'm just blowing that up, but I mean, it just seems like
I know. I think it looks worse than it actually is. And I know this, the only reason I say that is because he has media noon on Mondays. They don't have a team meeting until like 3 p.m. on Mondays. So it's just kind of how the day goes. But still, to your point, like, there should be like whether it's an emergency meeting or something to be like, hey, just so you hear from me first. Like, I definitely like, I think you're seeing, although I think Sherrone Moore is a great coach, I think that he will be a really, really good head coach in the future. You're seeing that he's only got a handful of games of experience versus Jim Harbaugh, who has hundreds of games of experience.
There's growing pains for sure. And I mean, maybe it's to be expected. I think also it's just such a rapid shift. You go from Hardball, who like he did extremely well in the Pac-10 or the Pac-12. Like he knew what he was doing. He was running a system, and now looking at him at the Chargers, he's put together a good team over with the Chargers. All of a sudden to Sherrone Moore, who, yes, he's in the system, he's in the culture, the players love him, but he doesn't have that necessarily the experience yet.
Right.
So I guess we'll see. I was actually going to ask you if you think that Sherrone is the coach for the future.
Is the guy?
If he's even the guy.
I think it's way too early to tell. I think there are people in Michigan Twitter, in the Michigan fan base, that are jumping off ship already, right? And I don't think that's fair to Sherrone Moore. I think, one, you have to realize, I think the Michigan fan base took for granted that Harbaugh is probably a top 5 coach in like all of football, college, NFL, all of it, right? Like, he's won at every single stop. There hasn't been a stint yet where he has not won, right? He took Stanford in the Pac-10 from 0-12 to 12-0 in 4 years. Yeah. One recruiting cycle, right? So
he ruined our national championship run, in the Coliseum. Like he's a damn good coach.
And then took Kaepernick and the Niners to the Super Bowl. And if it wasn't for his own fucking brother, he wins the Super Bowl. So like I think you're just realizing kind of how good of a coach Jim Harbaugh was. And no matter who it was going to be, you were going to have some type of drop off. And then
that's a good point.
I would say as much also as we all love Sherrone Moore. He crushed it at the end of last year when Harbaugh was suspended. He was the guy. Like, it was a no-brainer that you go with him. There was nobody else that you were going to go find. But there are growing pains. He's literally, as the actual head coach, not interim head coach, he has 3 games of experience.
Yeah.
That one off season, right? And in that off season, he lost 13 draft picks, right? 17 guys to the NFL, including undrafted free agents. And so there's not only you're seeing just like inexperience from him because he is literally inexperienced, but you're also seeing him try to rebuild a roster, which was possibly one of the greatest rosters that Michigan has ever had. Yeah. Right. So I think it's a combo of all that. Way too early, in my opinion, to like say, oh, he's not the guy. He's in over his head, all that stuff. Like, yes, he's got a ton of talent, and should they be playing probably better than they they are right now? Yes, but he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay.
I can see that. And I mean, to your point too, it's college football. You're only as good as your talent. I mean, there's a reason why the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Georgias and the, now Oregons, they always have top 5, 10 recruiting classes. Actually, Michigan was like kind of the first program to not do that. They're like the 17 to 20 range, but with recruit rankings. But I mean, if you don't have those elite players, good luck. In the SEC, Big Ten, good luck. So you're not an elite coach, you're not recruiting elite players, you're going to notice an obvious drop off. So it'll be interesting to see if Sherrone can continue that recruiting momentum and keep the culture intact.
For sure. And so I'll ask you this then, kind of back to you. Obviously, Lincoln Riley has had success in football before, right? Like it's not like he's not Sherrone where he only has 2 games of experience, right? But he's still in. This is year 2, correct?
Year
3. Sorry, year 3. What are obviously you guys are building. I feel like you're, building. You're going in the right direction. What are your, unfiltered thoughts on Lincoln Riley at this point?
Unfiltered thoughts are when we hired him at SU, and when SE hired him as our head coach, there was from day one an excitement. We were definitely excited because we actually had a head coach that knew football. But we knew that we could not have that Oklahoma defense at USC because that's what we've had for the past, frankly, 10 years, and it just doesn't work. It was soft. Players didn't know what they were doing. And it was definitely a liability from coaching.
Right.
And we knew that going in, and then USC got all that hate from Oklahoma fans for 2 years online, and we were getting berated every single day. And USC fans basically from the beginning wanted Alex Grinch to leave. Now that we've seen Lincoln Riley realize that he has to adapt to the game, he's still learning, and he's acknowledging that, I am all in on him. If we were going on year 3 and Lincoln Riley was still saying, oh, we're this close, we're going to do it, Alex Grinch is a good guy, and Alex Grinch was still at USC, I'd be out. I'd be 100% out. I would say this is another Clay Helton. Cool. Maybe he can win 9-10 games a season, and we'll get into the CFP. The second we face Georgia or Michigan, we're going to lose by 40 because we have linemen that are 265 pounds. It's not going to work. Yeah. So I'm all in. I think, and I truly believe, and I hope that Lincoln Riley has learned from his past teams. And I think the hiring of Henny and keeping Coach Nua from Michigan.
I know we miss him, dude. I mean, Michigan's, listen, I will say Michigan's D-line obviously has been great. So, but still from a recruiting standpoint, like he's a dog on the recruiting trail, bro.
And he walks into a room too. He's a big guy. He's imposing. When he's in your living room recruiting your kid, and he has that SC logo behind him, and Coach Henny and D'Anton Lynn, so I'm all in. I think we're on the right track. And at the beginning of the year, before the season kicked off, everybody said USC was going 7-5. I have that quiet confidence, because everybody on Twitter can have those. They're all keyboard warriors and they're all cussing each other out and saying, "Oh, we're going 12-0 every year." And we were projected to go 7-5. I was in between the two. I was thinking maybe as low as an 8-4, possibly a 10-2. If USC gets past Michigan this week, we have Penn State at home. I think Wisconsin's home, Notre Dame's home. So we're, is 11-1 possible? Is 12-0 possible? But it depends on this weekend. So I'm hyped about that.
Who would you say is your toughest game on your schedule right now?
Right now, it'd be easy to say Michigan, but I think just with Michigan's, they're unsettled on their offense right now. I would probably have to say it is 50-50 Penn State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they obviously lost to NIU. That's just a classic Freeman, thing. I think they're going to do that every year. Freeman's there. I'm not a huge Freeman fan, but Notre Dame and USC know each other like the back of their hands. So, there's been seasons where Notre Dame is a 500 team and USC is going to the national championship and Notre Dame beats us. It's always a good game.
Always. It's a throw out the record books type game. That's like the most cliche thing ever, but it really is.
Yeah. So I would definitely say Penn State. Penn State looks elite, and Notre Dame are the two major question marks right now. But I still feel confident in both those games because they're home and because, frankly, our coaching staff.
There you go. Okay. All right. So, I feel like both of us right now are at like this game, although we're only in week 4, kind of determines the trajectory of the rest of the year, right? Like, honestly, I do feel that way where if Michigan loses this game, and we're 2-2, and especially if the offense looks, not great like they have the past couple weeks, you're sitting here and you're like, what are we going to do against Oregon and even Washington and Michigan State? And then you got to go to Columbus. You got to
is Oregon home for you guys, or is
Oregon's home? Oregon's home. So that's good.
That'll help.
It'll help for sure. But I think like you're sitting there and you're like, these guys, I think it's more of a mental thing for us right now. Most of the guys on this team, they hadn't lost a game, right? Like they lost to TCU, and that was the one game that they lost in 2 full seasons.
Yeah.
Right. So you take those guys with that mentality of like, we don't lose, and you're 2-2, and it's like, well, shit, now what do we do? Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that's when like doubt creeps into everybody's mind. Are we really that good? Did we, were we ever that good? All that stuff.
That just put a thought into my head. It's almost like you guys are the 2022, 2023 USC, where USC goes 4-8 in 2021. Lincoln Riley comes to town. We are literally one Caleb Williams injury away from going to the CFP. And then we go 7-5 and suck.
Right.
And the culture's done. You can tell the players are like sitting on opposite sides of the benches. I'm 28 rows up behind USC players. You could tell the culture was it was not there.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like Michigan, that could be a scenario for you guys. It's not far-fetched to think.
Well, especially too, I've talked about this a little bit. Like when you have so many top NFL draft picks, right? Like we've got Colston Loveland, which I don't know if he's going to play. We don't know that yet, right?
I was going to ask you about that.
We got to talk about that in a minute. But you got Colston Loveland, you have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, all projected first-round picks. Some of that stuff happens, to your point, in that 2022-23 USC season. Like if you're not really playing for anything, those guys are going to, like, I'm not saying they will, because I think they're good guys. I think they care about Michigan, but like all of a sudden there are agents out there who are like, maybe you sit it out, right?
How's your knee doing?
Exactly. All of a sudden everybody's got a twisted ankle, right? And it's like, maybe you should hold out a little bit and let's just ride this out so you can make, $30 million as a top 5 draft pick. So who knows, what happens, but I think that trajectory is a possibility if Michigan loses this game. And I think for you guys, it's like, it is, you win this game, it launches you to like possibilities are endless.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like everything's on the table. Like you said, 11-1, and then all of a sudden year 3 under Lincoln Riley, like you're way ahead of schedule, in my opinion, right? Because who knows? I think it takes 4, 5, 6 some years sometimes to build a program. Usually an AD is not willing to wait that long, which I think is stupid. And most ADs fire a coach before they can get to that point. But year 3, like you're in a really good trajectory if you win this game. If you lose this game, some of that doubt creeps in again, where it's like, to your point, like, damn, like, okay, we're there, but not there all at the same time.
It also matters on the degree. Like if we lose 21-20, and it's a hard fought game, and then Michigan goes on and turns into a 10-2 team or 11-1 team, was it really that bad? But if we go into Michigan and it ends up being like you guys are running it down our throat, you have 350 rushing yards, and it's 35-10, and we get absolutely destroyed.
And then 100%. also if Michigan does that, but also goes like 9-3 too, right?
Oh yeah,
like, that matters as well. So yeah, I definitely think it's a very, very important game for both sides for a lot of different reasons. The coaching's like, both coaches are like, this is a must-win game. Like this would be a staple win for Sharon Moore to be like, all right, I can do this. Maybe even for himself to look in the mirror and be like, I can fucking do this, right? And then for Lincoln Riley to be like, show everybody at USC, like, I'm not Clay Helton. I'm not like the past guys, right? We can do this. So I definitely think that's pretty important. All right. So I want to talk about Miller Moss. First of all, I'm just jealous of his name. That's the coolest name of all time. And I think being
Miller time.
It's Miller time too. Oh shit, you have that? Like, god damn it, that's cool. I think that like half the battle of being a good athlete is having a cool name, and he's already won that battle. So so I mean, he's looked really, really good. Obviously, like you said in the LSU game, he made some plays that who knew. Like, I didn't know who Miller Moss was until that game, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, Miller Moss is here, and then has played well at other times as well. So. What are your thoughts though? Because obviously he's played well. You're in a Lincoln Riley offense, which we all know is amazing, right? That's his track record on the offensive side of the ball is unbelievable. But you go up against Michigan's defense, even though they didn't look great against Texas, they're still, I mean, there's talent everywhere, right?
Yeah,
there are draft picks.
You still have to be like a top right now. I'd still say it's probably top 30 defense. I mean,
for sure.
2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's still up there, but like top 30, we would be like, that's bad.
No, 100%.
Compared to what we thought that this would be a top 5 defense, right? So, but what are your thoughts about Miller Moss and the USC offense versus Michigan's defense?
Yeah, and again, this was he was a no-name guy, which the only reason why he was a no-name guy was because he was sitting behind Jackson Dart. Then he was, sitting behind Caleb Williams, like all these guys who are household names. He was an elite 11 QB at high school. He was a star recruit. Kind of just got the short end of the stick on playing early. He is very cerebral. He knows, you can tell the way he talks to the media, the culture in the locker room, his post-game pressers. He's very calm. He's confident, and he's not braggadocious. He goes in with a purpose. If he makes a mistake, he owns up to it. And even if the media asks him, "Oh, you're great, you're doing this, you're doing that," immediately points it back to his teammates. "Oh, my wide receivers did this. Kyron made this grab. My offensive line's giving me time in the pocket," which we didn't necessarily see the past couple of years. I like Miller Moss. He's obviously not as mobile. He's not mobile, but he's not looking to run the ball. He's definitely trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And we have a very young offensive line. We have a sophomore and a freshman starting. So it's going to be interesting to see. They held up well against LSU, and LSU has some NFL talent on their defensive line and the linebackers and whatnot. So if USC can hold up, I fully expect them to open up the playbook. And that's another thing that no one's considering. Right now at SC, we've probably seen 10 to 15% of the playbook on the field. We don't know what trick plays Lincoln Riley has up his sleeves. Like our leading wide receiver right now is Lake McCree, who's a tight end. And we have multiple 4 and 5-star athletes and our wide receiver core that haven't done a lot yet. So what is Lincoln Riley going to plan? As far as the defense, Michigan, I mean, it's a Michigan defense. So we have to keep running the ball too. Woody Marks, if he can get 3-4 yards of carry and just pound the ball away and then let Miller Moss throw it over the top, that's going to be big.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. You've got a couple young bucks on the offensive line. To me, that's going to determine the entire game. If your offensive line can hold up and give Miller Moss time, it's going to be difficult for Michigan to defend that, even though their secondary is really, really good. Will Johnson's the number one corner in all of college football, in my opinion.
Anywhere Will Johnson is, throw it on the other side of the field. Run it to the other side of the field. Do not throw the ball near him.
He's so good. And I think the stat came out today that he hasn't allowed a touchdown in like 2 years of snaps, essentially. So they probably will. We've got a freshman that's starting right now on the other side of the ball, opposite Will. And so, they probably will target him. I imagine if in what we haven't done, which I'm a bit shocked at, what we should have done against Texas and what we should do this week is whoever the USC number 1 receiver is, Will trots back over to each side. Wherever he's going, he just shadows him. But instead, we left them where they were, and then they just picked on Jair Hill all day long.
That's something that I've seen too with Sharon Moore. I mean, we don't have to get too into it, but I feel like he took Jim Harbaugh's playbook and just kind of slapped it on this year's team. Maybe he, didn't build his own playbook or this offseason, or, he felt like it for this team, whatever it is. But that's one thing the USC coaching staff does really well. They play to their strengths. And I feel like Sharon Moore just is kind of doing the same thing as they did last year, but you don't necessarily have the players for that. And then with the wide receiver cores comparing USC and Michigan, you can put Will on Zachariah Branch, or you can put him on Deuce Robinson, or put him on Mekhi Lemon. The other guys are going to be open. We have 6'5" wide receivers, 6'4" wide receivers, 6-foot wide receivers. We have a wide receiver that runs a 10, 300 meter. It's like, wherever we have weapons. So it's going to be challenging, I think, for Michigan on that front. And like you said, it all depends on if Miller Moss can have those 2 seconds to drop back and throw the ball. I think we will be seeing a lot of screen plays, a lot of swing plays, a lot of jet plays, Zachariah Branch, stuff like that, quick slants, quick outs, just to get the ball out of Miller Moss's hands.
Yeah, I mean, and that scares me, I'm going to be honest with you, because I think that where Michigan's defense has done so well, it's when a quarterback is dropping back for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then Michigan's front 4 is just so powerful that you can't hold them for that long, right? Mm-hmm. And then even without blitzing, they're going to get to the quarterback. But we did see Quinn Ewers was getting the ball out pretty well. But to be honest, Quinn at times had 10 seconds to throw because his offensive line is awesome. That Texas O-line is really good. Yeah. B, he's really good at navigating the pocket. So I say that to say, maybe there's an inexperienced QB in Miller Moss who, I think what happens, it goes one of 2 ways. In the first quarter, if Michigan gets to him, sacks him a couple times or something, gets him on his back on his back foot, then who knows what Miller Moss is going to do, because he probably had, he played really well in that LSU game, but I felt like they were humming for the most part. So he was very confident in himself. If he gets put on his back, a couple times, who knows what he's going to do. Now, on the other side, if he doesn't and he feels really confident in himself, all of a sudden, then they're going to start picking Michigan apart by getting the ball out really quickly. So I think it could go one of 2 ways.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and we really just don't know. I mean, I have a feeling of how it's going to go, but then again, you look at the roster and you say, okay, we have a freshman on a line, we have a sophomore on a line, and we have a transfer on the line. This is our line's first year playing together. So if they hold together, it could be a brutal day for Michigan. If they don't, it's going to be the complete opposite. So another thing to think of too is there's 110,000 fans in the stadium. They're going to be screaming at SC, and it's good that USC went into the Allegiant Stadium, that LSU and USC game, and came out with that W, because that stadium was loud. It's good practice for this Michigan game, but that'll definitely be a factor too.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it was loud. That seemed electric, but I'm sure it's half and half, if not more USC fans in that stadium. So I think that, it's a 3:30 game. I'll be there at 7 a.m. to set up our tailgate. So if you're coming out, if you're a Michigan fan, come by Chrysler Arena parking lot to the Blue by 90 tailgate. We'll have plenty of IPAs, plenty of Hail IPAs, plenty of Sun Cruisers. So we appreciate you. But I think this is an interesting matchup, man, for USC's first Big Ten game. This is like, there's a lot on the line.
Supposed to be, though?
This is the whole point. I love it. I love it. And I mean, it's just very different than what we've had in the past, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, last year, Michigan's probably playing Illinois or Rutgers or something like that, right? And in this, in their first in their Big Ten opener, and it's usually a cakewalk if we're being honest, right? At least for the past 3 years, and even beyond that, Michigan pre-2021, Michigan was losing to Ohio State, no doubt, right? Losing to Penn State sometimes, Michigan State, but they were beating the shit out of the Rutgers and the Illinois and the Marylands, right? So now all of a sudden, week one of Big Ten play, you got USC coming to town at 3-0, and it's like, shit. All right,
it's a wild card. Yeah,
fucking big.
And everybody thought that this is just it's West Coast team. So what is a Washington going to do? What's USC? They haven't been good since 2008 or whatever, but now all of a sudden Washington goes to the title game. Yeah, they're in a little bit of a rebuild, but they will be back. It's Washington. USC's playing. They're trying to get back to their traditional football. Oregon got Dan Lanning. He's I think he's 20-2 as a head coach, or 20-3 now. We got good teams. So I can certainly tell you USC fans are happy that we're no longer playing the Stanfords and the Cals and all those teams, because it was almost like USC wouldn't even show up because we knew we would win. So it'd be like a 40-35 win just because we knew we were going to win, and it wasn't even fun to go to. But now
the entirety of the former Pac-12 is on your shoulders this week. You know that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I'm not going to go that far. Oregon fans definitely would not say that. But I think some USC fans would maybe they would agree with it.
I'm exaggerating a bit there, but I do think it's like it is going to be, the overreacting of Twitter will be, this is either, if Michigan wins, then these teams don't belong in the Big Ten, right? Yeah. It's like they were West Coast teams, they can't hang. And then if USC wins, it's like, no, we're for real, right? And we can play. So it's going to be kind of funny, the narratives that are drawn from just this game alone.
Overreactions, no doubt too.
Of course. Well, I have to ask you as well. You mentioned it before, but it wouldn't be, a good podcast without it. I have to ask you what your thoughts as, I mean, you were technically an outsider, like a total third party to it last year, right? So obviously you weren't playing Michigan. You were seeing it from the West Coast. What were your thoughts on the entire thing? I have my thoughts for sure. I'm very unbiased. Very unbiased thoughts. But I want to hear from somewhat of a third party, outside party, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, there's always like I honestly think I'm in the middle. Every college team is trying to get an advantage, no matter what it is, right? If you want to win a championship, you got to get an advantage. You're rewatching film on the coach's lips, seeing his play calls or signals. You're trying to figure it out. Then on the other hand, you have this documentary coming out showing that Connor Stallions is having friends film people in the stadium, and he's giving signs and doing all these things that are just extremely questionable, right? At the very least. Do I think it played a factor into you guys winning a title? 100%. I do. Whether did he break the rules? That's not up for me to decide. I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have like two sides to it too. I'm somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. Obviously, I'm going to be more biased towards Michigan. There's no doubt about that. And I'll defend. I actually think I actually disagree with the take that it had an effect on us winning a title, because by the time he was suspended or whatever, the whole thing blew up mid-season. So we had 6 games without our secret weapon, so if you want to call him that, and still won. So that's okay. Did he take it too far? 100%. He's a crazy person. You watch the documentary and you're like, he's literally a psychopath. And for me, I don't know, although like he's our psychopath. That's
my psychopath.
Exactly. Like if you ever, like we want, I think Portnoy said it best. He's like, I want somebody that's that dedicated to Michigan that they'll go that far. Like anybody else in the world would want somebody that is that passionate about their team. So that's like half joking, but
it's true though, because it's like I don't mean to interrupt, but how far are you willing to go to win? And I mean, we can get into politics or whatever, but people in the South and the East Coast and Midwest, they're like hard-nosed people. They want to win. And then you got the people out west, I'm going to the beach, or football games on today. This is fun. And we haven't really been relevant because USC hasn't. You look at Georgia's 30 or 40 of their players have been arrested the past like 2 months. Oh, don't worry about it. They're good.
They're still just like, yep. Hey, come on back on Saturday. You'll be good.
He had players that were literally trying to stab people. He's like, the cops will bury it. We're good to go. Don't worry about it. Let's go get a title. Tim Tebow's the same. So how far are you willing to go? It does take a lot. You have to go the extra mile. So
I agree. But then okay, could it have given Michigan advantage? For sure. There's no doubt about that, right? But did it give Michigan enough of an advantage to win a national title in 2023 alone? Because I think that team was just that good, in my opinion. I think that team was really, really good. And then you take that and you're like, okay, well, they obviously don't have his signals or whatever he was getting from the Michigan State game on. So, and that was when they had to play all their tough teams. So you have the Penn State game, you have Ohio State, you have to play in the Big Ten title game, you play Bama in the Rose Bowl, you play Washington in the national title game. You got to win all those games without Stallions. Mm-hmm. So they're still pretty damn good, right?
No, they were. There's no question that it was an elite team. They were elite coached, elite players. Jim Harbaugh was head coach. The guy is a masterful coach. But also, how do you know that you weren't still getting help? Were there other people involved? You've played these teams, the Big Ten, 400 times in the past. You know them. It's like USC playing UCLA.
But wouldn't they would for sure change their signs, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
There are a couple things for sure. Did he take it way too far? Is he a psychopath? All yes. Those are all a resounding yes.
I saw his spreadsheet of all those. I was like, bro, this guy.
If anybody worked as hard as he did on that as at like curing cancer, cancer would be cured by now. 100%. If he like said, all right, I'm devoted, instead of Michigan football, I'm devoted to curing cancer, we'd have a cure right now.
Yeah, and he could have saved millions of lives, but instead he's watching Michigan football.
Hey, he got us a natty. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But all right. So to end it here, let's we've got a game here in 48 hours essentially. Michigan or USC comes to town. Give me your prediction of how Saturday is going to
go. Score prediction?
Yeah. Or give me the whole thing. End with the score, but give me how.
I don't think it's going to be any different. I think it's going to be exactly what we are expecting. It's going to be literally probably 70 run plays between both teams. Hard-nosed football. Who can be more physical and dominate the line of scrimmage? It's probably going to be a fast game, barring any mistakes. Like USC may have to be forced into using a timeout or two in unfortunate times just because of how loud the stadium may be. Other than that, I think it's going to be fast paced. I think there's a world where USC gets into the 30s, like Texas, but that's only if we are absolutely dominating the line of scrimmage and opening up our playbook for our wide receivers. But I also think people are underestimating Michigan. They still won the national championship last year. They still have an elite roster. Sharon Moore I still think the culture is intact at Michigan. They're a physical team. They know their identity. They just have to get to it and play physical ball. I would say USC, I want to say the 30s for USC, like a 31 to 20, but I don't think USC is going to win by that much. I would say probably like 27 to 24 USC. I think it's going to be a really close game like the LSU game.
I don't disagree with that. I do think it's going to be close. The only thing I disagree with, I think USC wants to play fast for sure. That's the Lincoln Riley offense. Michigan does the opposite though, because they just want to suck the life out of you and run clock. And so I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that Michigan's going to try to do the opposite of that for sure. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Michigan has not scored that many points this year, right? And so the offense hasn't been clicking. I mean, it's really hard to predict this game with Orji at quarterback because we have no idea what they're going to come out and do. Are they going to run read option 100 times in a row? Like maybe, I don't know. Like
if you guys turn into an Army offense or a Navy offense, I promise you this will be like 45 to 10. But I think you guys are capable of more than that.
I think so as well. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of question marks. How do those young bucks on your offensive line fare against Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant? Do they get bullied or can they stand their ground? How does Michigan's offensive line, who's really struggled, compared to the 2023 offensive line, how do they do against a Big Ten team? If they can run the ball, then Michigan's in different shape, like last week. Like even with 3 turnovers that ended up in points for Arkansas State multiple times, they still win because of their running game, right? So how does that go? Obviously, can Orji throw the ball? It's a crazy question to ask, but it's like
do we have a QB? I don't know.
In week 4 to be like, hey, can our quarterback from the defending national title teams throw the ball? I don't know, because he is 7 pass attempts on the year, right? So it'll be really interesting. And then we never even talked about it, but is Colston Loveland playing? He's, in my opinion, the number 1 tight end in the country. And a lot of people say that. And so, like, if he doesn't play, he's the target for the quarterback. So you're telling me you're putting a new QB in with no big target. How does that work?
Also, on top of that, USC's cornerbacks are taller and faster than Michigan's wide receivers. So if he's not in the game, and even if Orji can throw the ball accurately and downfield, are the wide receivers going to get any space? So.
Seriously, no, and that's the wide receivers have not been able to create space all year long. They have not been able to get separation, even against Fresno State, who I'll say this: Fresno State is a great program, and I think that they're really
we played
good.
them many times.
Yeah, they're really good. Arkansas State, not so much. Like you would hope that against Arkansas State, our wide receivers should be getting more separation than they did. And so to your point, like how is that going to work? Right. So if Colston Loveland is a no-go, because let's be honest, we've gone to him. He's the guy on 3rd and 7. It's an out or an in to Colston Loveland almost every time. Right. And so if Orji can't go to him, that means we're running either power, we're just going to run the ball on 3rd and 7, or it's going to be some like option, read RPO type situation. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting how it works out. I tweeted out, I don't know if you saw it, tweeted out this morning though. I have a weirdly good feeling about this game. And I shouldn't, after 3 weeks of Michigan football, after watching them very closely, to be honest, I should not have a good feeling about this game, knowing what I've also seen about USC. I don't know. I just have a good feeling about this game. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to run away with it, but I feel like we're going to figure out some way. I think the defense is going to step up for the first time pretty much all year. They're going to look like a real top 5 defense. I don't know. I think I see it. I actually like your score prediction, but flip-flopped. I like it as like 27-24 Michigan.
Yeah, I think that style of game, honestly, for either team, I think that loss for Michigan would be more detrimental to Michigan than it would to USC, because obviously you're probably out of the CFP if you lose. For USC, we're not. And it's like, okay, we lost by 3 in Michigan. We're climbing back. So we'll see, man. Honestly, what I'm excited for on that first snap, I'm excited to see 7 or 8 players in the box on USC's defense and playing actual traditional football rather than having like 2 freaking linemen down or 3 linemen down and an edge rusher like trying to play cornerback and 1 safety up top. Like I'm excited to see actual Big Ten football.
I love it. Big Ten football. Welcome to the Big Ten, Nico. We appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. We went for over an hour because it was we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, welcome to the Big Ten. This will be, Big Ten opener against USC, Michigan, USC. You can't ask for much better than that. Come on.
It's a Rose Bowl in September.
Rose Bowl in September. It's supposed to be 85 and sunny in Ann Arbor. So
the question is, can you guys play in that weather? Is the weather okay with you guys, or
I don't know. We're playing in Cali weather right now, so it might be like a road game. So, we'll see how it goes. But Nico, real quick, tell everybody where they can follow you at.
I'm just at USC_Nico on Twitter. That's like I'm just an avid fan. Family started at USC back in the 70s. So I just have that Twitter page for shits and gigs.
Love it. Love it. Great follow. So go follow him there. For us, you can follow us at BlueBy90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at BlueBy90 Podcast on YouTube, and BlueBy90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.